So let's talk about launching your first book. And the best way I know to help you with my experience is to tell you my experience, which was in 1969, second year of college. And I was getting ready to walk out of my dormitory room to go to my first class, and I was late to my first class because my mind started creating a poem of 2 pages, and I published that in my first book called When Twilight Begins. If I had the book in front of me, I would read the poem, or maybe even show it to you so you could read it. But I got a couple left in the garage, so don't be surprised if in the future we go back and revisit this. It was like this. It was like a romantic movie. This is the only way I can say it. And the words would come a sentence or two at a time. And I would write. Now, I was still in my dormitory room, had a pad of paper, and I was writing lines like this as they came into my consciousness. The best way and the only way I can explain this was it was magically written. I wasn't thinking about a particular lady. I wasn't thinking of writing a poem. I was thinking about going to my first class, 8 o'clock in the morning. What a bummer. I wrote that poem non-stop, not edited. And when it was over, when the 2 pages was over, the end came, and that was it. It became one of the first poems I put in my first book called When Twilight Begins. After that, some unusual events similar to that would happen, but they would be shorter poems, usually a page or less, till I got it to a 32-page book. That included the copyright page and title page. And then I'm sharing this so if you want to do the same thing, you can. I went to Writer's Digest magazine from the library, and I looked up the printers that were offering printing services. Some of them had space ads, some of them had classified ads, and I wrote to them, and I found one I liked really well, and I used that printer to print 1,000 books called When Twilight Begins. It was just a blue cover, cardboard cover, and the title and my name was in black ink. And if I remember right, there was not anything on the back cover. No price, nothing about me. And I started off when I got them in. The bookstore took 10 on consignment, and they flew off pretty close. He put it by the cash register. Then I get a phone call. Can he bring in another 10? And then this keeps going on. Can he bring in more? Can he bring in more? Can he bring in more? Let me tell you, I almost became rich. I was shooting toward being a millionaire. Even with his first book. First book, I priced at $1. Bookstore gets 40% discount. That leaves me with 60 cents. Out of the 60 cents, a quarter of it goes to the printer and postage to ship it back to me. Okay, so that's step one. Step two. The first step was getting the book written. Now, you're asking, how did these magical poems come to you? And continually, day after day after day, and they were clean. There was no negative, foul language in it. And all I can say is, if I knew where to go to find new poems this easily, I would visit that place every day. I'd keep going back to that place where the magical poems came to me. That's all part one. Part two, we're talking about, I got the books, I sold them to the bookstore, got my 60 cents a book roll that I had left over after I gave him 40%. And then I got real excited. I started looking everywhere for lists of bookstores that sold books. And at that time, you got to understand, this is 1969. We had no Waldens and Walden bookstores or B. Dalton bookstores or Books A Million bookstores. We had no Borders bookstores. I had to find independent bookstores. So I would send up an advertisement that a friend of mine who had a print shop made up for me. And I would include 2 or 3 poems, maybe 4, on one sheet, and then attach a cover sheet that told what I was doing, that this was my first book, and I'd like for them to give it a shot if they wanted to, that I'd appreciate it. Well, poetry was booming then, 1969. I got orders from all over the country. Now, I started going to gift shops in person on weekends and selling them to the card shops, but they didn't want 40%. Card shops want 50%. No problem. I wasn't making any money anyhow. So we get them in the card shops, we get them into the bookstores. The only thing is, the card shops were local, within driving range, but the bookstores be over the country, because I had a list of the addresses and I would send the ads to them. California, New York, Florida, you name it. You name the city and the state, and I eventually got into most of them. Over my whole career, I got into most of them. I made it a point to come out with a book about every 8 months. So I thought, I want to be international. Let's not just stop in the USA. So I bought a list of bookstores that sold English speaking books in other countries. And those would be, I think I wrote a few down, Canada, South Africa, and England. For starters, I can't even think of the other countries. Any of them that dealt with buying books in English, I sent them a advertisement and got them in those. Got them in many of those bookstores because, first of all, poetry was booming in their countries too. Number two, very few poets were selling their books for $1 a piece, minus 40% discount. And I think I paid postage to the countries for the books. So I was riding high, wasn't I? I was riding high. Came up with a new technique of selling. You may not want to try this because it may not be safe for you in this day and time. I went to local neighborhoods and knocked on the doors and told them I was the author of this book, and I was just going around to see if someone would like a autographed copy for $1. Most of them bought not only one book for $1. Some of them wanted 5 or 10 books to give to friends. After all, they were $1, and they were autographed by the author, and they could hold them to Christmas or a birthday or any time and give them away as gifts. So I got rid of the last ones. I still got about, if I have 5 here left over, I would almost pay $5 a piece to get more, or $10 a piece to get more. It was called When Twilight Begins. And then I stumbled into some financial problems called paying for tuition and dormitory at Western Kentucky University and a college ring when I graduated. So I didn't put out another book till over a year. It was called I Believe in Love. And I wasn't really pleased. I used a different printer. Instead of it being 32 pages, it was 24. Some of y'all watching this probably have all these books I'm talking about. I Believe in Love was 24 pages. I sold more out of the United States than I did, more out of the local area of Kentucky than I did in Kentucky. And I'll tell you why. Good advertising. 2 sheets. One with my beautiful big picture on it. Handsome picture. Almost as good as I look now. And then a sheet that had samples of my poems from that book, I Believe in Love. And then an order form about that big at the bottom said if you'd like to have one, they're $1. Post-paid $1. Orders came in from everywhere. In fact, some in other countries started corresponding with me. Man, and women both. I've got letters here from Edward Ashe. He must have sent me 100 letters. We corresponded back and forth. He was about as old as I am now. He was also a poet of sorts. Not what you say an aggressive, trying to sell his books, but he shared his poetry, and he used paper that was green and blue, and it wasn't normal bond paper. It was special paper. I'm going to read his poems over again because they're so special. He enjoyed movies. He enjoyed any kind of activities that people go to have fun. He wasn't like a guy that was a hermit that stayed in their house the whole time. He and his wife. Suspect they were in their 70s. How do I remember this many years later unless a person makes an impression on me, huh? Okay, so we had other letters coming in from England. I wasn't going to fly to England to meet a girl, okay? It was outside of my budget, even though I had invitations. Ain't gonna work, even if they spoke good English. No matter what their picture looked like. Okay. I just toss that in to let you know these type of things really happen. As a matter of fact, somewhere along the line of the first 2 or 3 books, I get invitations to a couple universities. One in Wake something, Florida. Can't think of the name. It was a university, and what was so strange about this university, Lake Wells, Florida. I didn't know how much of a Pentecostal church it was. It was Pentecostal of Anderson, Indiana. I was more familiar with Pentecostal, the Pentecostal churches that was a tiny bit different. It was Pentecostal of prophecy. Don't label me, I'm Baptist, okay? Now, I didn't care what denomination people were. I went to churches just to hear the preacher. Sometimes I didn't know what church I walked into. If I saw a gathering, whether it was at a tent or whether it was in a small chapel, and I saw the lights on, I'd just go on in. I mean, why should I care what denomination it is unless it's against my Christian belief? So I go into this. Oh my God, I didn't know this was going to happen. This particular Pentecostal college that invited me, and they let the whole English department out, maybe more than just the English department out, for me to speak in the Coliseum for 2 days. I could tell the head people had concerns. Do you want to know what the concerns was? I was supposed to be clean shaven. Well, right now, you look at me. Am I clean shaven? Not according to their records. Their records was I had no mustache, I had no beard. So the students and I didn't have any problems. I could feel a distance between the administrators and the teachers. Why'd we bring this renegade, homeless, this homeless poet down here? Well, I'll tell you how it happened. One of the girls there that was a student in English class, that was her project. They said, what's your, you got to have a project. What's your project? And I was selected, and I accepted. Let me get a drink of Coke here. So I accepted, and they treated me well. I don't want you to think that the administration snubbed me. They didn't. I could just feel a little distance there. What's clean shaven about this guy? A few of them became close in talking to me, okay? Professors. That was in Florida. I went to other colleges. Don't want to name a whole lot because I didn't go to a whole lot. One of them, after I got through with my reading, it's called a reading, where you read your poetry. One of them had a spread of wine and cheese and cookies and many types of wine. They must have gotten a word in advance that I like wine, huh? Think that's what happened? Okay, so that's the next part of me selling books. Now, you got to realize now that we've gone beyond the first 1,000 books to the second 1,000 books. Now we're on to Touching You, Touching Me, which became I'm not going to call it a good seller. I'll just tell you the truth. It went through 7 printings. And my printings usually started in the beginning at 1,000 copies. But by the time we got to this point, we were at 5,000 to 12,000 copies at a time per printing. So we went through 7 printings of Touching You, Touching Me. I thought Neil Diamond's album cover with that title on it was good, so I borrowed it. I borrowed his title, Touching You, Touching Me, and it seemed to fly very, very, very well all over. And so that's the next stage. Now, I've got you caught up, except I decided to put out 4 books at once. Not 8 months between them, but 4 at one time. And I loaded my car up. And I went from, I was out of school then. I went from one city to another city to another city to another city, stopping at all the Walden bookstores, which are bankrupt. They're not here anymore. B. Dalton bookstores, which are bankrupt. They're not here anymore. Barnes and Noble, I didn't know much about them. They were growing, but I didn't know anything about them. Didn't know much about at that time about Books a Million and Borders. I was hitting them hard too, but they weren't as popular at that point. They finally went bankrupt. Okay, so the three major stores I was selling to went bankrupt: Walden's, B. Dalton's, and Borders. Books a Million still around, and so is Barnes and Noble. I cannot tell you how many books those two chains buy. It's because I'm bad with numbers, and all I know to do is write an invoice, how much, how many books they ordered, and their discount, and what they owe. Bookstores usually pay for postage, so I would add postage in. Card shops don't pay. Let's see. Card shops want 50%, so I had to give them 10% more. Don't ask me. Don't ask me why. I guess they get more returns back from cards, and maybe cards are easier to print. I did start a card company then, by the way. It was called Love Street Card Company. The first company was called Love Street Books. That was starting with Touching You, Touching Me, not the first two. Okay, now we're getting down to where I load all 4 books that I have printed at once into my car, and I take off Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Columbus, Indiana, Dayton, Ohio, Indianapolis, Indiana. I didn't go as far as California or anything like that, but we unloaded those books, carried them in the car, and I made a rule that you may want to make a rule. Get a good felt ink pen, and autograph every book with Cheers, Cheers, Jim Wortham, or Have a Happy Life, comma, Jim Wortham, or anything you want to. Be sure to do that because it will probably double the sales. Okay, now I want to tell you the last part, and then we're going to close this thing down because you can only take in so much and remember it, I think. Okay? That last Coke was good. What I'm going to tell you I did was contact the big bookstores, chains, B. Dalton bookstores, Walden Books. Borders wasn't in our town. And at special occasions like Christmas, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, I'd set up an autograph session in front of their store with a booth, my name on it, and I'm autographing. And I would set that up starting maybe even a week ahead of time. Gotta tell you one story. I think I'll close after this because I don't know when to stop. I'm already at almost 30 minutes. I would ask them, would it be okay if I autographed? And they were sweet young ladies. Near my age. Of course. You set things up, you do it. They got 40%. No, they got 60. How we do it? Bookstores get 40%, I get 60%. And I gotta tell you this. This guy comes Christmas Eve. This is at the B. Dalton Bookstore in Louisville. He said, "Thank God you're here." I said, "Thank God I am too." He said, "Tomorrow's Christmas, and I need 19 books autographed. 19 books for the girls I'm dating." I said, "You have definitely come to the right place. That's the type of work I do." I said, "All I need for you to do is just print their name so I can read them. And I'll put something special in each one." He said, "You'll do that?" "Yeah." "How much you going to charge me for each one? Extra $1?" "No, I don't do that. I don't do business that way. The books at that time was either $1.95 or $2.95. I never sold them over $2.95. So I say, "You just pay what's on the book. I'm here to help. I'm here to sell books as the author. And I don't charge as the author any extra than the book sells for." So he prints them out. Oh, he's so proud when he leaves. He's on cloud nine because he doesn't have to think about it that night. He's got a signed book for every single girlfriend. How do you beat that? And if you want to hear a continuation of my stories in the book business, I'm still in the book business. My name's still Jim Wortham, but I've changed it to Jim Bob, but it doesn't show up that way on Amazon or anywhere else you look, Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. It'll be under Jim Wortham. You gotta look under Jim Wortham because it's not going to be under the titles of the books. That's just